Hi, welcome everybody. Good morning. Welcome to a Facebook Live. Another Facebook Live here on Gerton's nursery lot. I'm Sean. I'm the nursery manager. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about drought, like I did last time, watering, and then protecting evergreens and stuff going into the winter. So, again, just a reminder: we are still in a drought, despite the rain that we've been getting over the last couple of weeks. We're still at a deficit. So, don't just think because there's been a couple rain showers that everything's all hunky-dory now. You do still want to be aware of how much you're watering your plants, especially your newly planted trees and shrubs. You really want to be making sure that you're watering, probably 2 to 3 times a week, 20 minutes, hose on slow trickle, kind of right at the base of the trunk, right at the base of the shrub if it's a shrub. And again, that's just to get that slow trickle and really force deeper root growth. And then it's also really important that you're watering all the way up until the ground freezes. So it's not just through the end of October or whenever we see that first bit of frost on the ground. You really want to wait until that ground freezes. That moist soil is going to actually help protect those young roots. So it's really important for those, especially trees and shrubs planted this season, to have that watering all the way up until that first frost. So we'll go to some questions now.
All right. If I were to plant my hydrangeas in July, do you think by now their roots would be established?
They're pretty well on their way to being established. They're still gonna. They've been established enough to this point, but you're not going to want to just pull off on the watering just because of that fact. Like I said, you're really going to want to continue to water all the way through that first freeze, and again 2 to 3 times a week, just to keep that ground nice and moist.
Should I put my hoses away when it starts to get below 32 degrees, or how am I supposed to water my plants when I put them away?
Right, yeah, so that's a pretty common question. I'm telling you to water all the way up until the ground freezes. That's typically going to be middle of November, think maybe around Thanksgiving-ish time. So with that in mind, most people do put their hoses away kind of middle of October, end of October, because they're done watering their lawns, the leaves are raked, they're done for the year. If you are unable to keep the hose out, there are some alternatives. If it's a tree, you could certainly use one of the watering bags, gator bags. That's just a brand name. We've got a couple of different varieties in the store here. But essentially, that's something you would just fill up once a week with the hose, and it will do a slow release. People also could just take a bucket or something and go out and manually water it. That I'm kind of hesitant about because that doesn't really allow for that soaking watering if you're just kind of pouring it on, unless you're going to actually stand out there and kind of let it dribble out of the bucket or watering can. So as an alternative to that and the watering bag, people also are known to take buckets and just make really small holes on the bottom of the bucket with either a drill or just a nail and a hammer. And again, the idea is to make small holes, fill that bucket up, that 5-gallon bucket up, and then just go out and set that out on the tree root. And that'll just kind of slowly release. So those are some alternatives, but really, ideally, if you can keep that hose out, sure. So, and that's watering all the way up until that first freeze that moist soil is gonna help protect those young roots. In addition to that, while deciduous trees and shrubs are all gonna be dormant at that point, so they're not necessarily gonna be uptaking any more water, evergreens as well will be dormant, but any sort of additional moisture that we can introduce into that plant going into the winter will help the plant itself from drying out. Evergreens do keep their needles through the winter. They can still breathe through those needles and let off moisture through those needles even through the winter months. So winter burn is it generally occurs later in the winter, thinking mid-January through mid-February, mid to late February. Winter burn is it's a result of basically the sun reflecting off of the snow and then hitting the plant, and that sunlight, late afternoon sunlight specifically, bouncing off the snow, hitting that plant. The intensity of the heat of that sunlight on the plant's needles wakes those cells up, makes it think, hey, it's time to start doing our thing again. So it'll wake those cells up, and then when it freezes off again at night, it kills off those cells. And so then you'll see the browning in those areas where that's occurred. So it can't, the watering through the ground, through until the ground freezing isn't necessarily going to prevent winter burn, but it is going to certainly aid in the plant's ability to kind of stave off any winter burn.
Is there any specific way to prevent it?
So the best way to prevent it is going to be the use of burlap, and actually just creating a barrier for which the sun can't hit those needles. So really what you're going to want to do is you can either, if you have a single evergreen boxwood, or you've got a hedge of them, or a row of them, you can go about burlapping them in one of two ways. You can either burlap each individual plant itself, or you can just kind of create a screen. Now, like I said, the winter burn occurs from the late afternoon sun, so if your evergreen, your boxwood, if it's only getting morning sun, you really don't have to worry about winter burn. If it's only getting kind of more northern sun, you don't really have to worry about winter burn. It's those evergreens and boxwoods located on the western or southern side of your house or property, with that southwest exposure, sun exposure in the late afternoon. So in wrapping each individual shrub, or either way, whether you're wrapping each individual plant or you're creating a wall, you're going to want to keep that burlap actually away from the plant itself. If you just wrap the plant in the burlap, it's really going to kind of defeat the purpose, because that sun's still going to hit that burlap, it's still going to warm up in that one spot, and because that burlap is up against those needles, it's still going to warm those needles up and those cells in the needles up, and they'll end up freezing and dying off overnight when the temperatures drop again. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually kind of create a barrier about an inch away from the edge of the plant. And so you'll take, well, if it's an individual plant, you'll take 3 or 4 poles, stick them in the ground around the plant, like I said, about an inch away from the edge of where the canopy is, and then you'll just wrap the burlap around that.
We have a question from Gina. She said, how about a dwarf willow? Can I protect that?
Certainly burlapping it as well would be the recommended way of doing so. Sorry for the tractors. Just the morning stocking of the lot. So the willow really should be okay on its own if you're keeping it watered all the way up through the ground freezes. Doing some sort of barrier with burlap would be an additional way to protect it. Beyond that, nothing really needed. Well, any additional mulching around the base of the plant to help, again, kind of insulate those young roots would be beneficial, whether that's actual mulch, wood mulch, or just leaves as they fall in the fall.
Are there any shrubs that are likely to be able to use winter burn?
So deciduous shrubs aren't affected by winter burn, because again, they lose their their leaves, so nothing to worry about there. It really is the evergreens and boxwoods that you need to be concerned about or need to be more aware of and may need to take some preventative measures. Boxwoods are pretty well known for winter burn or being susceptible to winter burn, as are arborvitaes. Yeah.
I'm not sure you can answer this. Michelle says she has an elephant ear.
Mm-hmm.
How should she store it for winter?
That would be a fantastic question for our annual department. I am not as good with the tropicals and annuals, so. And was there a second part to that question, or?
Nope.
Nope, just that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So back to the shrubs that are more resistant to winter burn. Like I was saying, boxwood and arborvitaes are the two that are going to be the most susceptible to winter burn, and that if they are going to be on that western or southern side of your property with that exposure in the late afternoon through February, would really recommend burlap. Either each individual plant or creating just a wall of burlap in front of them, just blocking that sunlight. Junipers don't really, junipers, spruce, pines, yews, firs are all pretty resistant to winter burn. Those you do want to make sure that they're really well watered going into the winter, though, because they dry out. And it's not, don't freak out if you see your spruce go from a really bright, vibrant green in the fall to more of a dull green through the winter. That's, again, just a little bit of drying out. It will bring back up in the spring.
If my shrub does get winter burn, will the needles grow back?
So if you prune out the portions that do get winter burn and die off in the winter, branching will grow back and fill back into those spots. It's not going to be an immediate thing, so there may be a chunk missing from your plant for a season or two, but over time it will fill back in.
I am going to make one remark for the woman that asked about the elephant's ear, Michelle.
Yeah.
Next week, we will be doing some talk on bulbs.
Okay.
And that's bulb planting. However, I do believe Karen, our other expert, can't answer that question.
Yeah, she'd be a much better source for that one.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, so that's all the time we've got for today. Thanks for joining us again. And please, as always, feel free to stop into the store at any time, speak with our experts. We've got all the burlap, ropes, cones, and